Mark, how are you, sir?
I am great, John. How are you?
We're doing great. Hey, the one thing I wanted to start with, Mark, I know you just got back from Africa, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. But Cameron Gray, who's sitting in here with me, co-hosting while Cam is out, we used to work with G. Gordon Liddy, and he was an FBI guy, and he always talked about the firearms they use at the FBI when they roll out on a job. So there was an article about the history of FBI handguns that caught our interest. The FBI has issued a wide variety of handguns to its agents over the years. We were hoping to start with that and pick your brain about that. Tell us a little bit about the history of FBI handguns, if you would.
Well, it's interesting. Bill Vanderpool, who is a part-time gun writer now, he worked for the FBI. He was in charge of firearms training for a long time. He was also involved in the selection of various FBI handguns and ammunition. And Bill's a friend of mine, and as a retired agent, he's looking for things to do. And he's been doing a series of articles for me about the FBI kind of in the old days. He did a great story for me on Walter Walsh, who was a legendary agent before he became a full-time Marine Corps officer. He did a story for us on FBI rifles, and he went down to Quantico and he dug through the collection down there to produce an article on FBI handguns. Now, the other thing that we have going on, not in this article, but we do have an original 1945 J. Edgar Hoover article about the FBI and its guns.
That's cool.
In this issue.
That is cool.
Wow.
We've had a lot of great people write for the Rifleman over the years, but how many people can say that they've had J. Edgar Hoover, Ernest Hemingway, and others write for the magazine?
That's very cool.
But it's interesting if you look at what the FBI did over the years. It really mirrors the trends in American law enforcement handguns. Of course, early on, FBI agents weren't even allowed to carry guns as part of their job, and they'd have to go and get various sheriff's departments or something like that to give them a badge so they could, go in bad places and do their job, which is amazing to me. And so you get guys like Walter Walsh, and he's carrying a .357 registered Magnum. You get other guys carrying, 32 detective specials and stuff. And really, the FBI, principally an investigative agency, but sometimes they'd have to draw guns and shoot people.
Sure.
Absolutely. It mentions in here one of Gordon's favorite, I remember, is the Smith & Wesson Model 10.
That's right, Johnny.
That's right. Mark, tell us about the Smith & Wesson Model 10.
Well, the Model 10 is also known as the military and police, and it was the dominant handgun in American law enforcement for many, many years. I mean, it was up against the Colt Police Positive and such. But, the Colt, some agencies used them, but it was the Smith & Wesson Model 10, regardless of barrel length, that rode in the holsters of American law enforcement for decades. And you know the story better than I do, John, but I distinctly remember listening to you guys on the radio one day and Gordon, Mr. Liddy, talking about, being issued his short-barreled Model 10 and being advised by an agent to just go ahead and take the front sight off now. And I'm not sure. This is a family program, John. I'm not sure we can tell the rest of that story.
Yes.
But I imagine the listeners will figure that out.
That's right. Yeah, and the other now this is not germane just to the FBI handgun article here, but just about the FBI firearms. Another thing Gordon always used to talk about was when they used to go out on a job and guys, because I guess back in the old days they had Tommy guns.
Yes, they did.
And then they had shotguns, and he said the guys always preferred the shotguns over the Tommy guns when they're going out on some serious action. I guess, just because you're going to really get when you're, I guess, at a certain range, you're really going to get the job done with a shotgun versus a Tommy gun.
Well, and the other thing, too, about any fully automatic firearm, and I don't know if this is part of their thinking, but if you're the guy with the machine gun, you're the guy who's going to draw fire, because if you have the most firepower, other people are going to shoot at you. Mm-hmm. With what the FBI was doing, they were taking down high-risk bad guys, and often a precision load of buckshot. I know that sounds odd. Was the right tool for the job. One short-range devastating shot, and hopefully you're going to end the fight. Despite J. Edgar Hoover's claims to the contrary, it took a while for the FBI to really become truly professional in its firearms training. And it takes a long time to teach a guy how to use a submachine gun properly, because in American law enforcement, every round you fire, especially as you get into the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and now, you're accountable for. And if you cap a guy at close range with a shotgun, odds are you're not going to overpenetrate too bad, and you're not dealing with a sea drum full of 45 ACP slugs all over the local landscape.
Very good. Now, what else is going on in American Rifleman?
Oh gosh, we've got a lot going on in this particular. My problem is I'm working 2 months ahead of you guys. Once we finally get these magazines out, it's sort of fire and forget, until I find out there's an error, and then I get to remember it every day.
Sure.
But no, it's interesting. We spent a lot of time this year on the 100th anniversary of the U.S. model of 1911.
Absolutely.
And we almost forgot a pretty significant anniversary, and that's the U.S. Army's adoption of the U.S. rifle Cal 30 M1. It actually was originally called semi-automatic rifle. And so this is the 75th year anniversary of the U.S. M1 Garand rifle.
Wow.
And we've got a great article in here by Bruce N. Canfield on the first Garands. And the M1 Garand, and just in case you're wondering, I slip in and out because everybody calls them Garands, but John Cantius Garand is how he said it. And we actually have a Q&A from Julian S. Hatcher, Major General Julian S. Hatcher, Major General of U.S. Army Ordnance Corps, who worked with John C. Garand at the Springfield Armory. They were very close personal friends. And he did a Q&A in American Rifleman in the 50s saying, hey, how do you say this? And he said, well, when I went to his house, he said it Garand. But, you could say it any way you want to, so.
I always like to pay homage to the man, how he wants to say his name. Let's say it that way.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly
it always
right.
works for me. Well, shifting gears a little bit, you just came back from Africa, and of course, Mark Keefe is not going to come back from Africa without a few stories. Tell us what happened there.
How much time you got? I really should have come to the studio for this one, John. I was fortunate enough to be invited along with Dwight Van Brunt from Kimber, Tim Brandt from Federal ATK Cartridge Company, and Mike Scobie from American Hunter. Wow, there's a Freudian slip. He works for Peterson's Hunting, a direct competitor to American Hunter.
Right.
The editor-in-chief of American Hunter, Scott Olmsted, he's a good friend of mine, and you probably wouldn't appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely.
But no, we went on a trip to test rifles and ammunition to the Caprivi Strip of Namibia, and the Caprivi Strip it's a wild place. We flew into South Africa, stayed overnight in Johannesburg, went up to Kasami, Botswana, and then Botswana and Namibia there are only separated by the Chobe River. And just a phenomenal hunt, one of the most adventurous hunts I've ever been on. And it was put together with Jamie Trout, who's a professional hunter there, and we basically ended up flipping a coin to see who would get what, and I ended up with an elephant tag. And so I've been around when elephants have been taken down. Contrary to popular opinion, in some areas there's a lot of overpopulation. We're very near the Botswana border, separated just by a river, and you could see in the Chobe Game Park that there are too many elephant in there. They're great to look at, they're fun to take pictures of, but they've just completely destroyed the habitat. And I was hunting on the Namibian side with it's called an own use permit, and basically we were hunting a big old elephant well past his prime, past his breeding season, breeding time, basically to deliver meat to the Kasika people of Namibia. They're Caprivians, and so we picked out a big bull. There was a herd of 9 bachelor bulls the first morning of hunting. And just so you know, John, I got my rifle. I went through the South African paperwork. I had my U.S. paperwork. I went through the Botswanan paperwork. I went through the Namibian paperwork. And I was delighted to be taking a Kimber Caprivi and 458 lot. Rifles, however, even big elephant rifles, aren't a lot of use without your ammunition.
Oh, yeah.
And so my ammunition, all my hunting clothes, my underwear, toiletries, things that you really take for granted, remained in Atlanta with Delta for a few days.
Oh,
well, a week. Let's call it a week.
Wow.
And so I ended up using a 416 Rem mag that Tim Brandt had brought over, also a Kimber Caprivi, and that's a a 400 grain trophy bonded sledgehammer, and good gun. Tim shot a buffalo with it. Great hunt that we did. So it depends on what kind of animals we were around. Whether I had a rifle or Tim had a rifle, because we only had one with ammo.
Wow.
And so it was a marvelous adventure. We had cobras, African killer bees, hippos coming at us, crocs everywhere, and elephants. Yeah, that's the whole point of the story.
Now, Mark, did you get? Are you expecting a Bob Parsons GoDaddy.com / for your murdering of an elephant?
Well, it's no, I'm not. The good news is that we have video of it, but it's not gonna. We didn't have a hunting crew, a video crew for a TV show there, because the best way to mess up a perfectly good hunt is to go ahead and bring 2 or 3 guys with tripods and sound equipment, and the subtlety of a full production crew moving through the bush isn't what you'd imagine. So. But anyway, if you don't mind me going on a little bit, we got to the area of the Keefe people the first day, met up with our game guide, great young guy named Victor, and he said, "Oh, elephant." And we're like, yes, we're hunting elephant. He said, no, elephant here. I'm like, oh, okay. So we walked through this village, and sure enough, there are 9 bull elephants standing in this in the periphery of this village, and they're eating everything, because that's what elephant do. And my professional hunter Anton said, "Well, can we shoot one?" And he said, "Oh, yes." No, not here. And it turns out that in that area, it's a very heavy tourist area, and you can't shoot an elephant close to a lodge. You can't shoot them near a village. There's, they cross some just track, some path, and they're okay to hunt there, but not on the other side of the track. And we were amongst these elephant within 20 yards of them every day for 5 days. And we picked out this one very large old bull, probably 45 years old, 10,000 pounds. They are a lot bigger than they look at the zoo, I might add. And we were in amongst them, and they just kept coming back to this village. And eventually, I think it was on day 7 of the trip, day 5 of the hunt, one of the game guides said, "These elephant are a problem," because they were just camped out on the edge of this village, and they'd go and they'd come back, they'd go and they'd come back, and the Keefe people from that region hadn't been able to send their kids to school for 2 days because there's 9 bull elephant camped out in their village. And Anton contacted the chairman of the Keefe people, Boniface. He called the chairman of the Conservancy, Edward, and then he called a friend of his who he used to work with at the Namibia Game Department, and got permission to take one of these elephant a little closer to the boundaries than normal, and that's basically between the huts and the soccer field. And so it was, these elephant literally were right there, and it was a herd of 9 bulls. And basically, they hadn't killed anyone yet, but they were getting a little too comfortable around the villagers. And so we moved into the village to take this elephant, and literally the entire village is standing behind me. I had an audience, a studio audience. Wow. And we moved in, and the only shot we could get was a frontal brain shot, and which we hadn't really talked about until then. And I knew the basic anatomy of the elephant, and I had a 40-yard shot, and I shot just a little too low. And the elephant turned, and we shot him a few more times. And it's probably good that I shot low the first time, because he took a step, and that got the other elephant moving. And then we finished him. And normally when you're hunting, especially a big game animal, you get a moment to reflect on this, to think about what you've just accomplished, to sort of take a couple of minutes of solitude to honor the animal. Not possible. I had 60 villagers screaming and yelling. It was like Christmas, the 4th of July, and President's Day, all at the same time.
Wow.
And just an incredible experience. It turned out this elephant was a very old bull, and he provided at least 5,000 pounds of meat to the Keefe people.
Jeez.
And basically, my friend Mike Scobie is thinking about starting a Hunters for the Hungry program for Africa, because between the hippo he shot, the hippo my friend Dwight Van Brunt took, the buffalo that Tim Brandt took, we estimated we provided 13,000 pounds of meat to the villagers of the Keefe people.
Wow.
And it was pretty exciting. We had cobras. and it's great to be 10 miles from anything and ask your PH, so what happens if I get hit by a cobra? Well, normally you'd live, but there's no chopper here, and we'd have to carry you, and well, you might make it.
Wow.
And they're not good for meat anyway.
Yeah.
No, they they're kind of scrawny, really,
And chewy too.
Yeah, and chewy. We had a brush with African killer bees. Well, we were stalking through the reeds after buffalo, and we set our backpacks down, and it was a fantastic hunt by Tim Brandt. Made a very long shot, a good shot on a buffalo, but we set our backpacks down, and one of the game guides said bees. I'm like, oh yeah, I see. There's these two big, beautiful formed beehives right there. I'm like, oh, what kind of bees are those? And Anton says, African bees. I'm like, oh, very dangerous. I'm like, well, when you say dangerous, Anton, what does that mean? And he said, well, they're African bees. And I said, you mean African killer bees? He says, oh, yes, that's what you call them. And I said,
you call them.
and then he looks at me, and he was a very unflappable guy. He shot 68 elephant, and he had most of his hair chewed off by a lion one time. I mean, here's not a guy that's rattled easily. And he says to me, yes, if the bees come, just go straight for the water and don't worry about the crocodiles.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Mark Keefe, thank you. Wow, what do you do to relax?
I
He comes home in time for a hurricane.
Yeah, perfect.
An earthquake.
I'm heading out right now to. I've got plenty of milk, I need gas for my chainsaw.
There you go.
Yeah, there we go.
Mark Keefe, American Rifleman. Check them out online. You have the print edition, the digital edition, and all the social networks. Thank you, sir, for being on Entering News. We love having you.
I'll try and get down there in person soon. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you, sir.